I'm going to move us on to our next speaker joining us. Let me pull up his introduction. So joining us next to speak is Robert Malengreau. He is the founder of UmRio, based in Brazil. And UmRio helps to create a safe and enabling environment for the poorest children in Rio's favelas through rugby. It's empowering them to avoid joining gangs. So I will turn things over to Robert. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Owen. Thank you for everyone for the opportunity to share a little bit about our story and our journey with the Gratitude Network. I'm going to share a short presentation that I put together. Are you hearing me okay? Just to confirm, yeah, brilliant. So I've split this presentation into a few sections. I thought I'd give a bit of background as to who we are at UmRio, our development over the past 10 years. This year marks 10 years of impact in the community we operate in. And then I highlight a few of the challenges that when we joined the Gratitude Network were very much at the forefront of our priorities, before moving on to how those challenges have been addressed and some of the outcomes, quite tangible outcomes that have come out of this support. So UmRio was founded in 2013, initially using rugby as an entry point to a wider development model. We began operating in the Morro do Castro favela, a community across Rio's Guanabara Bay, with 87% of the population living below the World Bank's extreme poverty line. We were never sports evangelists. We always believed that it was important to pair sport with other interventions in order to obtain the holistic and integrated outcomes. So even from the start, we began implementing some informal education programs and job readiness training. So we initially started with rugby, but it's very quickly moved into a 3-pillar development model. In 2013, we were operating 2 to 4 hours a week, serving 200 children and young people from the community, a community which notoriously had one of the poorest academic outcomes in the municipality. As I mentioned, we're now marking a decade of impact in the community. We're serving 5 schools. That 3-pillar development model has been fleshed out into a 5-pillar development model based around rugby, education, job readiness, healthcare, and social services. Our activities span 70 hours throughout the week, and we've served more than 2,000 children from the community, with the progress in academic performance surpassing twice the local average, and young people obtaining 14% higher grades than young people who aren't involved in our program in Morro do Castro. We have a lot of other data that I can happily share some of our reports with whoever be interested in seeing it. So I thought I'd share, as we look back at some of the systemic impact that we've had in the community. So these are the schools that we began, the pink line and the orange line are schools that we began operating in 2022. So they were also in a since 2019 and was on a downward trajectory, and they were recommended by the city council. But the blue line is the school that we operate in. I'm sorry, this graph might sound confusing. This data refers to age grade discrepancies. So in Brazil, where if children don't pass the academic year, they're held back. So in 2017, when we began implementing educational interventions in a more formal and structured way, we had 42.9% of kids 2 to 3 years behind schedule on their academics. And by 2019, 2 years after the implementation of programs, that figure had dropped to 34%. Again, when looking at this data, we looked at the 3-year average prior to the implementation of educational programs at UmRio and the 3 years post. And we see that when we look at the city average, our children and young people at the school that we operate in was performing at more than twice as well as the city average. And so in terms of reducing age grade discrepancies, hopefully that makes sense. Within that period, we initiated as many grassroots charities as I like to see as sort of a instinctive and reactive response to local challenges that we saw. Set up a charity status and only really began raising funds in 2017 when we managed to formalize our charity status in the UK. So between 2013 and 2017, it was very much sort of out of our pockets. I think a lot of charities go through that process. When we by 2023, we see that our fundraising capacity has increased 7-fold. We've got Brazilian charity status, UK charity status. Last year, we've obtained 5013C status in the US, so we're able to raise funds in America. In Brazil, we've obtained a sports incentive. We've qualified for sports incentive law, which enables companies to allocate up to 1% of their due taxes to UmRio with no added cost. We've started to obtain corporate funding from the likes of Rexona or Shaw in the UK, Disney, and amongst others. And we're also improved a lot of our grassroots fundraising. So this growth, sort of going into the challenge, and I'm happy to answer questions about sort of the program itself and what is within the education pillar and what is in with the employability pillar and what is in within our healthcare pillar and social services pillar, because each of these pillars have interventions in themselves. But I just thought I'd frame the challenge where we were at when we got to the Gratitude Network. And I mean, this is quite a good challenge to have, but as you can see from the graph, the funding increased exponentially, has increased exponentially and has continued to. But with that, suddenly, my role as the founder and the CEO, which had been played the role of the English teacher, the rugby coach, the accountant, the manager, started to have to delegate and had a bit of founder syndrome involved in that process. And then you suddenly find you have to, manage an increasingly growing staff. And that was a real challenge that I, on a personal level, had faced, creating the HR systems. So, recruiting and onboarding new members of staff, delegating responsibilities. And in the midst of all this, our programs were growing, not only in the community where we began operating in, which I should say with this photo here, I'd like to say is the 16th best robotics program in Brazil, which was a new program. We started to have lots of new programs, and not only that, we began implementing programs and having demand to implement certain aspects of our model in different schools, and we had to manage that and manage new stakeholders. So this is where we found ourselves in 2022 when we began our experience with the Gratitude Network. Through mentorship and the sessions, some of the key learnings have been improving, sort of starting to establish systems of HR. With the mentorship, we had some leadership. I had a leadership mentorship with Andy Rice, which was really fruitful and sort of helping me get through on a personal level the process of letting go, which I think is part of every founder's challenge. And we've begun to improve our internal communication systems. And this year we've actually hired head of communications, which is fantastic. This is the last slide, and hopefully you have a bit more time for questions, but just to sort of show some of the outcome. In 2022, I was struggling to accept that what was initially one-person team had become a 6-person team, and I'd had to delegate functions. We've now increased that by 83% and have 11 people hired paid staff. That doesn't include the 73 volunteers that we have and other members within our HR structure. But this is a sort of, I think, a great indicator of the confidence that I've been empowered by through the Gratitude Network. I thought of including this in a quote actually at the end. We actually had a journalist come to UmRio a couple of months ago, and within our HR structure, beyond paid staff, beyond volunteers, our program design process is very intentional, ensuring that the voice of those we serve are instilled at every level of development, every level of decision-making process. And that's been done initially through a youth council, and now we have 11 young leaders who have come through our program, who through our prep course for university entrance exams are now studying at some of Brazil's top universities and are now taking on leadership roles within the organization. And what was really quite a marked experience for me was we had this journalist last year, a month or two ago, come over, and they asked the youth council what was the UmRio's biggest achievement, and I was quite taken aback when Duda, our head of our young leader who's leading our prep course for university entrance exam, having completed it herself and studying philosophy at university, he responded, well, in 2013 it was Robert's project, and now it's our project. And that was I think, almost the mission accomplished phrase that you kind of want to hear when you set up a program like this. So yeah, that's the presentation. I can go on for hours, but I won't, and I'll open up for questions.
Thank you so much, Robert. I want to just initially thank you and call out just your vulnerability in sharing that struggle with founder syndrome, with letting go. As you identify, it's not unique. That doesn't make it any less of a challenge. And I think that highlights some one of the aspects of Gratitude Network's fellowship program is that chance to be vulnerable and to be introspective and to look within and tackle some of those personal challenges alongside the growth of the organization too, the growth of the individual. So thank you for sharing that, Robert.
Thanks, Erin.
So we have a question in the chat that from Bill asking, what program element did you find most valuable, and what would you like in the future from Gratitude Network? Maybe seeing how that relationship can evolve.
I think I personally found the mentorship very helpful, as sort of as I mentioned, the going through that process on a personal level of delegating roles, and it was very helpful to have someone guide me through that process, and have a much healthier relationship with letting go. So that was, I found, incredibly valuable. I think being in contact with an inspiring group of leaders across the world who, as you said, are not going through necessarily unique challenges, but are experiencing similar struggles, and hearing from a program in India, for instance, that some of the challenges that leader might be going through is on the other side of the world is very, very similar to the challenges that we're going through here in so that I think that is particularly helpful. And I'd love to just remain in contact with this really valuable and incredible group of leaders.
Thanks for that, Robert. I think that what you identified, the network, is that network effect of we're in this together. We all have each other's success in mind and sharing. And part of that sometimes is sharing your own challenge, which is in support of another leader. So thank you. And
Well,
our Gratitude Network fellows remain a part of our network as alumni. So yes, we look forward to continuing to support you.